Shalom, did you know that studies show that 99% of Orthodox rabbis, Messianics, and Hebrew root leaders doesn't know the biblical definition of sin according to Moses? Unfortunately, studies show that 99% of Messianic leaders and Hebrew root leaders doesn't know the biblical definition of sin according to Moses. They're happy with the verses that they use in the New Testament, but ending with the behavior that they don't know and they really don't care. When in reality, the biblical definition of sin according to Moses is the root of all types of sin. For the 1% of Messianic and Hebrew root leaders that does know what sin according to the New Testament is, this is the verse that they use. 1 John 3:4, King James, whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. NIV, everyone who sins breaks the law. In fact, sin is lawlessness. New Living Translation, everyone who sins is breaking God's law, for all sin is contrary to the law of God. English Standard Version, everyone makes a practice of sinning, also practice lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. The word law in Greek is nomia. Nomia means instructions, and instructions in Hebrew means Torah, later translated in English as law. The word law can distract the believer because anytime a person reads or hears that word in any type of way, the first thing that comes to their mind is blue and red police lights. That could put a negative on the person's mind, skipping the importance of the word law. Most Messianics and Hebrew root leaders use the word law as just the 10 commandments, including the weekly Shabbat, the feast, and eating kosher. Anything outside this fence is sin. For an example, smoking marijuana, smoking cigarettes, casual drinking, letting your kids watch rated R movies, or what doesn't fit their personal theology of sin. The proper way of reading 1 John 3:4 is, everyone who sins breaks the Torah of the Creator, for all sin is contrary to the Torah. But most Messianics and Hebrew roots leaders doesn't realize that John is quoting the Torah verbatim, and they don't know where, and they really don't care. So where in the Torah that John is quoting? It's in the book of the Torah that most Messianics, Orthodox Jews, and Hebrew roots leaders doesn't read because they don't really understand. The Torah teaches us that truth cannot be told through one witness. One must need two or more. So let's search the Torah to find two witnesses of the biblical definition of sin according to Moses and understand where John is quoting. The two witnesses for truth of the biblical definition of sin according to Moses and where John is quoting in the Torah is Leviticus 4:1 and Leviticus 5:15, procedures for sin and guilt offering.
Chapter 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give the Israelites the following instructions for dealing with those who sin unintentionally by doing anything forbidden by the Lord's commands." Then the Lord said to Moses, "If any of the people sin by unintentionally defiling the Lord's sacred property, they must bring to the Lord a ram from the flock as their guilt offering. If any of them sin by doing something forbidden by the Lord, even if it is done unintentionally, they will be held responsible. When they become aware of their guilt, they must bring to the priest a ram from the flock as a guilt offering. This is a guilt offering, for they have been guilty of an offense against the Lord."
The biblical definition of sin according to Moses means if you're walking in righteousness and you happen to break any of the Creator's commandments or against your neighbor, accidentally or unintentionally, you have sinned and you're guilty of that sin. And when you become aware of that guilt, you have to confess that sin. This is when the believer must know all the Creator's commandments from Mount Sinai of Exodus all the way to Deuteronomy. Leviticus 4 is written in a special order that teaches us of how sin affects from a person to a person. From the high priest to the community, the voted in elder, to the people, and the parents to the children. This is a second witness of when the Creator shouted down his third commandment in Exodus 25. I lay down the sins of the parents upon the children, and the whole entire family is affected, even the children in the third and fourth generation, for all those who disobey me.
Chapter 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give the Israelites the following instructions for dealing with those who sin unintentionally by doing anything forbidden by the Lord's commands. If the high priest sins, bringing guilt upon the entire community, he must bring to the Lord a young bull with no physical defects. He must present the bull to the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. If the entire Israelite community does something forbidden by the Lord, and the matter escapes the community's notice, all the people will be guilty. When they discover their sin, the leaders of the community must bring a young bull for a sin offering and present it at the entrance of the tabernacle. This is a sin offering for the entire community of Israel. If one of Israel's leaders does something forbidden by the Lord his God, he will be guilty even if he sinned unintentionally. When he becomes aware of his sin, he must bring as his offering a male goat with no physical defects. If any of the citizens of Israel do something forbidden by the Lord, they will be guilty even if they sinned unintentionally. When they become aware of their sin, they must bring as their offering a female goat with no physical defects.
The order of how Leviticus 4 was written is also a hidden in plain sight reminder of our rebellion with the golden calf for violating the Creator's blood covenant at Mount Sinai. Remember, it was Aaron, the priest, that took the gold of the women and the wives and the children and made the golden calf. That's why the Torah says when the priest sins, he must sacrifice a bull, because the bull is a reminder of the golden calf. After Aaron had made the calf, a community of Israel worshipped the calf, but not all Israel worshipped the calf. That's why the Torah says when the priest sins and brings guilt upon the community must sacrifice a bull, because the bull is a reminder of the golden calf. This includes the elder and the people that was in that community. This is where we get the term in the Bible, they lead Israel to sin like a bad shepherd leading sheep. In Numbers chapter 15, verse 22 through 31, we have other witnesses of the biblical definition of sin according to Moses when we enter the land, and what happens to future generations when they sin against the Creator. From communities to individuals, then we end up with a judgment of what happens to a person when they deliberately breaks the Creator's commandments.
Chapter 15. If you native Israelites want to present an offering by fire that is pleasing to the Lord, you must follow all these instructions. And if any foreigners living among you want to present an offering by fire, pleasing to the Lord, they must follow the same procedures. Native Israelites and foreigners are the same before the Lord and are subject to the same laws. This is a permanent law for you. The same instructions and regulations will apply both to you and to the foreigners living among you. But suppose some of you unintentionally fail to carry out all these commands that the Lord has given you through Moses. And suppose some of your descendants in the future fail to do everything the Lord has commanded through Moses. If the mistake was done unintentionally, and the community was unaware of it, the whole community must present a young bull for a burnt offering. It will be pleasing to the Lord, and it must be offered along with the prescribed grain offering and drink offering, and with one male goat for a sin offering. With it the priest will make atonement for the whole community of Israel, and they will be forgiven. For it was an unintentional sin, and they have corrected it with their offering given to the Lord by fire and by their sin offering. The whole community of Israel will be forgiven, including the foreigners living among you, for the entire population was involved in the sin. If the unintentional sin is committed by an individual, the guilty person must bring a 1-year-old female goat for a sin offering. The priest will make atonement for the guilty person before the Lord, and that person will be forgiven. This same law applies both to native Israelites and the foreigners living among you. But those who brazenly violate the Lord's will, whether native Israelites or foreigners, blaspheme the Lord, and they must be cut off from the community. Since they have treated the Lord's word with contempt and deliberately disobeyed his commands, they must be completely cut off and suffer the consequences of their guilt.
There is no forgiveness for deliberate sin, and it's not the Creator or the people that cuts you off from Israel. You cut yourself off from Israel. However, the God of Israel is merciful and gracious, slow to anger. He's not willing that anyone should perish, but all should come to repentance. His abundant and steadfasting love and faithfulness for thousands that loves him and keeps his commandments, forgiving iniquity and transgressions of sin. But we fear Jehovah because he does not excuse the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the parents on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. This is why the Creator commanded us to wear these fringes and to remember and obey all the commandments given to us through Moses, and especially so we do not do what's right in our own hearts, because the Creator knows that this world, your family, your friends, and religion men would do everything they can to take them away from you.
Chapter 15. And the Lord said to Moses, Say to the people of Israel, Throughout the generations to come you must make tassels for the hems of your clothing and attach the tassels at each corner with a blue cord. The tassels will remind you of the commands of the Lord, and that you are to obey His commands instead of following your own desires and going your own ways as you are prone to do. The tassels will help you remember that you must obey all my commands and be holy to your God. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that I might be your God. I am the Lord your God.
To grow in more knowledge and wisdom about sin according to Moses, you need to train yourself on all the Creator's commandments from Genesis to Deuteronomy. The blood covenant God made with Abraham, the blood covenant with Israel at Mount Sinai, the Creator's criminal justice system for fair treatment of slaves and servants, personal injury, restitution, protection of property, laws of social responsibility, Sabbath holy days, the 3 annual feasts, the tabernacle of Moses, the 5 Levitical offering systems for making atonement for sin and guilt, to free will burnt offerings for the rich, middle, and poor, to free will food offerings and thanksgiving offerings that teaches us proper worship and behavior, and the Creator's angel to lead you in the way. The way the Creator's offering system to make atonement for sin and guilt is a perfect way for the price you pay in life when you sin against the Creator's commandments and your neighbor, and the price you pay starts off with your pockets. Some judgments can leave you homeless, incarcerated, and sometimes your life. These sin and guilt offerings and making restitution up to 20% can be very expensive. It can easily bankrupt a person so much you'll be in debt to the Creator for the rest of your life of no way of paying him back. We learn this in our lives today of the price we pay when we sin against our neighbor. Do you think a person will ever speed again after multiple tickets and then they finally get a $1,000 ticket? Most likely a person will not steal or lie or any type of crimes after spending 5 to 10 years in jail. Hopefully these judgments will make a person not sin against a neighbor by not stealing, lying, or testifying falsely without proper investigation, or judging a person by his nationality, either rich, middle, or poor class.
Chapter 5. If any of the people are called to testify about something they have witnessed but they refuse to testify, they will be held responsible and be subject to punishment. Or if they touch something that is ceremonially unclean, such as the dead body of an animal that is ceremonially unclean, whether a wild animal, a domesticated animal, or an animal that scurries along the ground, they will be considered ceremonially unclean and guilty, even if they are unaware of their defilement. Or if they come into contact with any source of human defilement, even if they don't realize they have been defiled, they will be considered guilty as soon as they become aware of it. Or if they make a rash vow of any kind, whether its purpose is for good or bad, they will be considered guilty even if they were not fully aware of what they were doing at the time. When all of the people become aware of their guilt in any of these ways, they must confess their sin and bring to the Lord as their penalty a female from the flock, either a sheep or a goat. This will be a sin offering to remove their sin, and the priest will make atonement for them. Chapter 6. And the Lord said to Moses, Suppose some of the people sin against the Lord by falsely telling their neighbor that an item entrusted to their safekeeping has been lost or stolen. Or suppose they have been dishonest with regard to a security deposit, or they have taken something by theft or extortion. Or suppose they find a lost item and lie about it, or they deny something while under oath, or they commit any other similar sin. If they have sinned in any of these ways and are guilty, they must give back whatever they have taken by theft or extortion, whether a security deposit, or property entrusted to them, or a lost object that they claimed as their own, or anything gained by swearing falsely. When they realize their guilt, they must restore the principal amount plus a penalty of 20% to the person they have harmed. They must then bring a guilt offering to the priest, who will present it before the Lord. This offering must be a ram with no physical defects or the animal's equivalent value in silver. The priest will then make atonement for them before the Lord, and they will be forgiven.
Once a believer gets to understand all the Creator's statutes, judgments, and commandments, it's like a blazing laver. It's like a mirror, a reflection in our lives. When we read the Bible, we learn about life, we learn about God, we see the blessings and the curses in the history of Israel. This is a reflection in our lives today. We realize in our lives of how we've sinned against the Creator and how we're guilty of those sins. But we thank the Father because He gave us His everlasting mercy of judgment that we don't deserve, because we're still living today when we owe the Creator death. The Creator holds His priests and kings to the highest standard of behavior and obedience to the Torah. Understand the weight of sin. Remember, if an Israelite sins by lying, God will punish that Israelite for that sin. However, if a priest or king commits that same sin, the priest and king will suffer more divine punishment than the Israelite. This is why when we read 1 John 3:4 and James 2:10, they all sum it down that sin is contrary to the Torah of the Creator. To those who has woken up through the Holy Spirit and now following the Word, and those are new to Torah, I hope you guys like this episode of What's the Biblical Definition of Sin According to Moses? I sure did. I'm Mike Molinar, and this is Military Torah.